All right, we're back for another episode with the Apex Insiders betting preview at Monza GP. This is F1 Capper. I am going solo today, so this will hopefully just be a quick, short podcast hit, however you want, just to kind of get you some information before the weekend comes out. So we're at Monza, Italy. So this one is going to be one of the fastest tracks that we have on the calendar. Obviously, opposite from the last two races. So we're not going to see anything different from last year's compounds. They are expecting to stick to the C3, C4, and the C5. So as we're kind of anticipating, it probably is going to be a one-stop race. This is the longest pit stop of the season, so most teams are going to try to minimize as much as they can of time. As even though this has a track that has passing opportunities, it's still going to be quite challenging to pass, as you just have to have a major delta in terms of pace to be able to pass on anywhere on this track. Everyone's going to be full throttle, and it's just overall going to be hard on the tires, especially as a rear limited track. So taking care of your tires throughout a race is going to be very challenging. So as it relates to qualifying, it can get tricky. There is high track evolution here. Even though it may not seem like it, that it's gets pretty dusty. It's going to be a ramp up, and then once you get to qualifying as well, you might get caught. You might see some guys that are kind of that are on the cut line that actually go out, do their last lap at the right time, and they knock out a driver that you don't expect. So as it relates to the midfield teams, margins are going to be close. So you have the midfield teams and the top teams. So margins are going to be fairly close. I mean, you can claim that McLaren is going to be the top team. However, I mean, it's not going to be as easy for them this weekend. Even though you try to strip as much downforce as you can, complete opposite of Monaco, you're basically stripping as much drag as possible. McLaren is still going to be pretty hard to challenge here. They actually could have won last year, should have won, but Leclerc brained the strategy and just did a one stop and was able to hold off Piastri, who tried to go for the two stop, was catching and gaining, but it was already too late for them. So again, margins are close. So when it comes to questions around like which midfield team is going to do better, obviously Williams keeps talking about how this track suits them well, and it does. It probably will be fine for them. However, again, I go back to, you never know. Like there could be a racing bull out there who they technically are saying, oh, we might be it might be challenging for us this weekend. But if you look at past performance, they haven't really been that bad. It's really more of a um, where their peak performance can land them is against the entire field. Yeah, they're going to be maybe at max best midfield team they could get. So again, going back to like getting caught, like if they do their strategy right for qualifying, you never know, they can actually be up there. So I'm not going to just write them off. Obviously, Haas, I still think is going to be pretty challenging, or going to be challenging here as well as Williams. So as it relates to odds, I would not get too cute. I wouldn't chalk really early. I would say like watch free practice, see how their margins are looking. Are they bettering themselves session per session? So that's just related to qualifying. And then when it gets to the race pace, pay attention to their tire deg, because tire deg is going to be very critical. Like, Gasly last year, he was one of the first to pit off his medium tires, and that was because he was really shredding his front left tires and was losing a lot of time. So he had to get into the pit. So that's what's going to hurt these teams when it gets into the race pace, is how are they actually doing on their tire dag. So they can qualify high, but then they can keep dropping down when it gets to the into the race. So but yeah, let's go into some of the odds. Right now we're still kind of waiting to see what free practice odds are going to be like. I have not seen anything come out for Bet365. though MGM does have a few things, DK as well. So one of the plays that I do like that Bradford had called out early on, he's been one of the guys that's really quick to spot the lines as soon as they drop. Ferrari to be top team winner in FP1, which is actually not bad at 6-1. You expect Leclerc; he should be coming out here. Great track for him. Great track for Ferrari. I expect them to bounce back. The last two tracks were not really ideal for them. It's not their type of style for that car. This is obviously going to be more for their style. Um, so yeah, I expect that Leclerc and Ferrari are going to find a little bit better form here. The plank wear will always be an issue through every race. However, it's going to be less of a concern here just because you're not dealing with as much elevation as we had to deal with at the last two tracks. The bumpiness is not going to be as bad as it was expected in the past two races as well. So a lot of flexibility when it comes to how they can set up the car, and they can probably put it a little bit lower, and it's all about the speed. And on top of that, when you start stripping out the downforce, it's not going to push the car down as much as they had to in the last two races as far as it comes here. Still will, but it's not going to be as bad. So that is something to pay attention to, though, throughout practices. However, I think that they're going to come out strong. One of the things they will probably be doing is testing the limits of how low can we put this thing. So it may, as the weekend progresses, they may keep it that way, or they might be reducing the amount of how much they can put that suspension down. So Ferrari 6-1. Obviously, we all believe in Leclerc. So if you can find a Leclerc top three at really decent odds, which I'm not really, I mean, there's only one place right now where you can find it. It's at like minus 185 on MGM. I'm checking right. Yeah, minus 185. Not really interested in that. But there's a strong opportunity for Ferrari to really to take this session, as well as one of the reserve drivers for McLaren is also going to be on the grid. So something I like there. As far as it comes to head, one of the head-to-heads that I really liked was, and that I've booked already as well, is the Sainz over Stroll. So that one, really, Sainz has really good form around here. I know he was in a Ferrari the past 3 years. He is in a Williams, so you got to factor in that the car obviously is not going to put him in the top three. But given his performance, and then his past performance, and then when you look at Stroll's performance just overall at Monza has not really been that great. And especially I look back at FP1, FP2, and FP3. He's really averaged anywhere between 14th or higher when it came to his position. So he's had a tough time. The one thing that I am cautious about is, lately the Aston Martin have been pretty solid when it comes to their racing and their qualifying pace, but that was at two tracks that were completely different. So they might be solving for some of their aero specifics when it comes to those tracks. When we're at a track like this, it's going to be a lot different. So I do like that. If you could still grab it, I would get it. So those are a couple free money Friday bets that I like. As far as what I'm kind of eyeing and what I would pay attention to is Behrman. Behrman is definitely going to be a guy to pay attention to. So most of the young drivers have really a lot of experience at Monza. They've raced here multiple times in their F4, F3, F2 careers. So they know how this track is going to work. It's not a technical track. It's a fun track for every driver. And again, it comes back to you really got to pay attention more to the car, more so the driver, because the driver will obviously make a difference, but the car is going to make more of a difference here than it is going to be the driver, since everyone seems to know how to drive around here. It's pretty simple. So yeah. So when it comes to young drivers, like don't fade Colapinto even, right? He's been pretty successful here in his younger career, and even I think it was last year he's been able to keep it in the top 12. However, that being said, Alpine, I do not really trust them this weekend, but I'm not completely writing them off. Again, I want to see how the weekend goes, but I'm not really fully bullish on them. But don't think that a young driver is on the grid first time driving here, because we've seen this countless times in the past where young drivers had to come in, step in, for another driver. So an example is Nick DeVries. He came in and stepped in and did. I think he had a top 10 performance. What was it, 2 or 3 years ago? We've seen Colapinto. He come in. He stepped in as well. Lawson. He came in with the AlphaTauris and he put it in at like P13. So it's not a matter of can they do it. We know they can do it. So it's just really going to be about the car. So don't be afraid of that. So yeah, when it comes to like grid rival pick right now, his qualifying for Colapinto is at 17. It might be best to take his better at this point. This is probably the opportunity to be taking him better because, again, anything can happen in qualifying here. So he might be able to get that last run and he pulls himself out. Even if he doesn't make it past Q3, he probably can get himself into 16, 15. So something just to don't be writing off some of these drivers that you may have written off many times throughout the year. So yeah, I think that we're going to see some interesting tactics as it comes to strategy when it gets to qualifying. Outside of that, when it comes to the race, I'm not going to really be cute with the race. I do want to see some race pace. I do want to see what the DEG is like before we make any assumptions there. But yeah, going back to Behrman, circling back to that, I really do think that he's going to have a better performance, at least against his teammates. So something I will be eyeing is him throughout every session. Just let's see how is he going to do every session to be able to say like his odds make sense to even like back him at chalk against Ocon. So right now, definitely going to be targeting him against Ocon in free practices, potentially even for qualifying. If you do want to take the risk, though, you could just take him for qualifying right now and just set and forget, because I think he's sitting at around minus 150 against his teammates. So, and a good thing about this is we know that he can have that performance, and it's against his own teammate, it's against his own car. So you're not playing the variable against like another team. So it may not be a bad idea to be thinking about Behrman, as well as. Something else I was thinking about was Lewis Hamilton. I know that he's got a 5-place grid penalty, but if you can find him at even odds, top 6 for qualifying, that's still like he will still push hard and try to get to position. So you still would win that bet, before the grid penalty takes place. So don't take him at race day as much as you could target him at maybe even odds for top 6. This could be the opportunity he gets back into form because, again, it's not a hard track. Ferrari should be pretty strong here. So if you can see him at even or even longer odds, I think it's worth a bet. I would preface this by saying, if you've had a good year and you've made some pretty good unit sizing and throughout this season, that's a bet, that's a fun bet you could take, but don't expect it's going to hit, of course. But if you have been struggling this year and you're just trying to find something, I would not chalk to this. Again, I would go back to like, how have you been doing all year? So as far as any other outside of those bets, something I will be looking at is classified. I'm not going to really push on anything over or under just yet. I do worry about what the status is for a lot of these guys, and they're right now Mercedes engines have been kind of iffy when it comes to reliability. So I am a little concerned about that. I don't expect there's going to be a lot of chaos. So we will be eyeing the classified market, as well as margins. I've kind of gone back and forth. It's really been up and down on like what the margins could be. So I guess my suggestion would be watch how FP1 and 2 play out. If margins are definitely close between the McLarens and the Ferraris or the Mercedes or Red Bull, then it could be that we will be striking on the under 0.1 when it gets to qualifying. But again, I do want to see some cars on track before I make those assumptions. So yeah, that's going to be something I will be eyeing, but may not even play it because it seems like it could be very tricky. You just never know where that can land. And plus the odds are reflecting it. I think it's minus 105 or even money at under 0.1. And then, you're looking at 2-1 between 0.1 and 0.2. And then there's really not much value to go beyond 0.2. So we'll see what that's like. And as far as the race margin, it's very possible I think Caesars has over 3.5 when it comes to their race margin, while other places are doing 5, some do 6. I think over 3.5 could be in play for the weekend. Just depends on who's going to be locking out the front row. So I'm not going to be rushing to chase that. It is something we're definitely going to be just eyeing as we're getting through the weekend. So um, yeah, as far as Grid Rival, again, one of my favorite tickets that I booked was Behrman over 13.5 for qualifying. I think that is probably a ceiling, but you know what? It would not surprise me if the man makes it beyond into Q3. So I think that he could do it, but 13.5 is again one of those tricky points where it's going to be very close to the midfield. And 13.5, I think, is going to be reasonable for Behrman because he does have the experience here. He's actually won here multiple times in his younger career. So I do believe it. And Haas usually can be strong at places like this. So I kind of like the combination of Behrman over 13.5 with Colapinto over 17. I am taking that risk. We're going to have other Grid Rival plays. So if you want to get into the Discord, we'll be chatting it and we'll be seeing what options we have. Another one I actually can't stop looking at is Leclerc 4.5 better. I mean, this is kind of a buy low spot. Although 4.5, I feel like he should be at 3.5, but 4.5, if you like, and if you are bullish on Ferrari this weekend, 4.5 is definitely a number to take. That will definitely shrink down if he keeps topping times. You know, if he gets in the top 3 in FP1 and FP2, you probably are only going to see 3.5. So I think it is definitely a good play in this situation. As far as Max and Red Bull, I'm not really going to be completely writing them off, even though people keep saying this is not their type of track. It isn't. It may not be, but it doesn't mean that they can't put it in and get the top time. And it is Max, so we don't have to rehash that. So I think when it comes to Red Bull, I think that is something to not just discount just because they keep saying this is not his track. They will find ways to. I mean, they have one of the most aero efficient cars. They should be able to still have the speed to be able to put it up there on the lap time. So I'm not going to get cute with Max, though I am not also expecting them to be. It's very possible he could just be landing in the 4th spot. One of the things they will be working on, which they have been trying to work on, is making sure whatever pace that they have going into qualifying carries over into the race when it comes to their DEG, because right now their DEG is not to the same standard as Ferrari. Probably similar to the Mercedes, where it can be very iffy at times. So I think that is something that you want to just pay attention to. Outside of that, I think that is, most of the things I wanted to kind of get away here was, again, track evo will be high. One stopper is going to be where the teams are going to be looking for. Margins are going to be very close. It can be very tricky. Don't get cute. Don't try to chalk it early on. Pay attention to each session. See how teams are performing. Are they consistently getting the pace? Are they improving on their pace, session over session, lap over lap? And just paying attention to that so we can try to make more informed decisions as the weekend goes on. So, but yeah, this is F1 Capper. I appreciate you taking the time, and we'll see you this weekend in the Discord.